Hi, I'm Mrs. Mercer, and I am the Decatur Township District Reading Specialist, and I will be doing your Sunday Level 9 lesson for today. In the following slides, you will see some letters, and then you will see a keyword slide after that. The goal is for the student to give you the sound of these letters as quickly as possible. Please make sure that they don't add the schwa, and the schwa is basically like an sound. Instead of t, they would say t. Um, Instead of b. Buh, we don't want the addition of the schwa sound. We want the clipped version, the t, the b. Um, okay. If your child or student makes an error, you will say, let's trace. You would say, this is the letter S, which says S, and you can show the keyword slide. For example, this would be sock. We want to give them a visual as well, and then you want them to trace it 3 times. And so they would take 2 fingers on a textured surface if you have one. If you don't, a smooth surface will work. And then they were going to say, S says S. S says S. S says S. And then you might ask them, what is the keyword again? And hopefully they will say sock. Okay, so that's what you would do if they did an error. Obviously, it would be different for whatever error they have. I'm going to go through the following slides and I'm going to pause briefly. You may need more time, so feel free to pause the video to give the learner more time to respond. R can be a tricky one. Make sure they say R, not er. Okay, so now we're on the spell sound section of the lesson. I'm going to say some sounds and then the student is going to write down the letter that makes that sound. Excuse me. In class, they would have their student notebook, and so they would write that in this section of their student notebook. You can do that on any piece of paper that you have at home, but this is just for them to be familiar with the school format, just as a reminder. Um, in this section, also, if you don't have paper, you can use the notes portion of your in your iPad. You could write there, or if your teacher has a PDF of this in Canvas, they could write it on there. For this part, if they make an error, you'll want to stop them immediately and possibly say, so you would say, I see, I see I wanted ah. Can anyone tell me what the ah sound makes? So then you're trying to prompt them for the correction. So hopefully they would say a. Okay. And then you would just say, if you have cross it out and make sure you write it correctly. A says ah. Now write it 2 more times for extra practice. Okay, so that's how you would do a correction if they make a mistake on some of these sounds. Okay, so first sound, and they would start writing this right here or wherever on their paper. Ah. Feel free to pause if you need more time on any of the sounds. B. B. Ah. I. And I forgot to repeat directions on this portion. If you had done previous lessons, you will know. But the student should repeat what I say, and then they need to repeat and write it at the same time. So for the next one, an example would be G. The student would say G, and then they would say G while writing the letter in the spell sound section. Mm. Okay, give your students some time to do those. Pause the video if you need more time. At this point, you might want to ask some questions of your child. You might say, how do you write long E in the middle of a word? How do you write long E in the middle of the word? So E, if you hear the E sound in the middle of the word, how would you write that? Okay, and they could write that in the spell sound section and you could see what they wrote. And then the answer is EE. If you hear E in the middle of the word, it is most commonly spelled EE. Also, you can ask, how do you spell long A at the end of a word? How do you spell A at the end of a word? The answer that you should have given for that is AY. When you hear A at the end of a word, it is most commonly spelled AY. Excuse me. Okay, on this next section, your child's going to read one column from the next page. There's several columns available in case you want to repeat the lesson and vary it by doing another column the next day. Make sure they place their fingers underneath the word while they're sounding it out, and try to get them to, if they're sounding out word, letter by letter, to say the word as a whole afterwards. If they make an error, say, let's trace. Make sure they're looking at the word. So they need to say the word and trace each letter and say each sound. So for example, if they made an error on the word jet. Okay, so they should be looking at the word jet and then jet. You want them to do that 3 times using 2 fingers to do the tracing. Jet. And at school, we would try to do this in sand if we had it available, or a rough textured surface. Okay. So these are the columns. You can pause the video and have your child read one column today. If you want them to have more review of this lesson, then you can do the same thing tomorrow and then just have them read a different column. Okay, so we're getting to go to the spell words section. I'm going to review, because I don't know who's starting at what lesson, an example of touch spelling. If you are a right-handed person and you touch spell, you're going to have your pen or pencil or whatever writing instrument you have in this hand, and then you will touch spell with your left, following the left to right sequence of the language. So you would spell cat, at, but you could also touch spell and write at the same time. Now, if you are a lefty, this is harder for me to do, of course. You would have your writing instrument in this hand, and you would spell cat, at, following the left to right sequence of how we read words in our language. So that's an example of how we do touch spelling. Okay. So now we're in the spell words section, and this is the section where these students would write it. We do not fill these lines every day. So don't feel like you're not doing enough if they're not. In this section, I will dictate a word. The learner will repeat the word. Then they're going to touch spell the word. And then they're going to touch spell and write at the same time. Okay. So for example, if I gave the word deep, deep's going to be our first word. So let's just do it as an example. Deep. Okay. Learner will repeat deep. Then they will touch spell. Deep. Now notice there's only one finger for E. Okay, because that's one sound. They should know 2 letters make that sound. So deep, and then they will write the word. Okay. Next word, and feel free to pause at any point if your child needs more time. Pit. Repeat, touch spell, and write. You will use that routine for all the words. Say. Fat. Run. Hop. Seed. 6. Ray. Map. Cut. Lot. And then the sight word I. Pause the video to give your student or learner enough time to complete the words. And now we're going to check the words that we should have written. Okay. First word should be deep. If you made an error, cross it out. Do not erase. Cross it out and write it correctly 3 times. You will do that correction for all of the following words. Pit. Say. And pause if you need to make a correction. Fat. Run. Hop. Seed. 6. Ray. Map. Cut. Lot. I. Okay, now we're on to the spell words, phrases, and sentences section. I'm going to dictate some sentences. The learner is going to tap the words on each finger of the sentence. So they're going to repeat the sentence, they're going to tap one word per finger, and then they are going to write the sentence. So for example, the cat ran. The learner would repeat, the cat ran. Then they're going to tap out, if they're righty, the cat ran. Then they're going to tap it out and write it at the same time. Okay. Make sure you give yourself time after every sentence to look for capitalization and punctuation. Okay. First sentence. I need to feed the dog. Repeat the sentence. Tap out the sentence. Then tap out and write the sentence. Pause the video to give your child time to do this. Make sure they look for proper capitalization and punctuation. The next sentence is, the seed is in the pot. Repeat. Tap out the sentence, then tap out and write. Make sure you check for capitalization and punctuation. Pause the video to give your student enough time to write the sentences. Now we're going to check. So, check to see if this is what you wrote. If you made an error, cross it out, don't erase. Just cross it out. For example, if you made an error with feed, say you wrote fed instead of feed, cross out fed and then write it correctly above it. Okay, so those are our sentences. I need to feed the dog. The seed is in the pot. All right, now we're on to our new learning for today. And we have the vowel E. This is the short E, which says eh. E says eh. Repeat the rule with me. Short E is found at the beginning or middle of a word. Can you say that with me? Short E is found at the beginning or middle of a word. The key word for E, short E, is edge. Edge. Okay, so right now, right here in the Introduce New Material section, you see those three little lines right there. I would like for you to write E, and while you're writing it, say E says eh. E says eh. E says eh. And I'm going a little out of order today because when you're done with that or before you do that, I want you to take your fingers and say E says eh. And if you can say at the beginning or middle of a word. E says eh at the beginning or middle of a word. E says eh at the beginning or middle of a word. Pause the video to give your student time to do those two activities. So now the learner is going to read some words out of the word book. They do not need to read all of these words in one day, but if you would like to give them extra practice, that would be great. I do suggest that they read at least one column. Make sure that they put their finger under the word as they read it and that they eventually blend it together. We don't want et, and then them done. We want met. They can say et, met, and that's fine. But et, that's not. Okay? So pause the video to give your child time to read these words to you. Okay, now we're on the Introduce New Material section again. So right here at the bottom where we have these 3 lines, or 9 lines, I should say, I'm going to dictate some words. The learner is going to repeat the word. They will touch spell the word, and then they're going to say each sound out loud while writing it on paper in this section or on whatever paper you have. First word, pet. Student will repeat pet. Student will touch spell pet, and then they will touch spell while writing it on paper. And you will do that with all of the following words. Feel free to pause the video to give your child time to do that for each word. 10. Red. Men. Fed. Set. Give them time to write all of these words, and when they are finished, make sure they read the list of words back to you that they have just written. Oh, something is wrong. Oh, Skip slides. Okay. And then the final portion of our lesson is the read aloud. So have your child read aloud this paragraph to you. You can pause the video now and have them read that to you.